Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, so do we have a temperament that would like to start sharing with us what an ideal work environment would look like to you going forward? Okay.
So I'm an organized gold,
Okay.
and I think the one that appeals to me the most is Clubhouse, because I would say I'm quite productive on my own, but when I'm working on my own too much, it's quite monotonous. So coming in to have that like social discussion for problem solving and that social element would probably stimulate me. From like a more like critical perspective of that though, my worry if like an organization was to like implement that, so many people have gone for jobs like all across the world now because of that remote aspect. Mm-hmm. And therefore, say I work in India now, but I'm actually located in Glasgow, I can't then go in, and then I missed out that socialization. And then there's the whole in-group, out-group kind of bias going on. So that would be my worry with that.
Yeah, and that is very true. And was it Catherine was asking which temperament is a gold? A gold is an IS. It could be a T or a SP. Yes, an SP.
SJ. No?
What is SJ?
Oh, sorry, SJ. Yes.
SJ.
And it doesn't matter whether you're an E or an I. So
yeah, it doesn't matter if you're an E or an I or an N or an F. Or T and a T or an F. Oh, sorry.
That's Hannah's sounded quite extroverted, SJ. Basically.
Yeah. Yes, Hannah. What is your MBTI?
Yeah, I'm extrovert, so I'm ESFP.
Yeah. Okay, so that makes sense. So you need it from the extroverted perspective, but also from the feeling perspective too. You like those relationships a bit more. They're a bit more meaningful to you than they would be to say to somebody who's the T.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and do we have Deborah, you're a gold as well.
I'm have preference for ESFJ. So S and J, I think, makes me organized gold.
Yes.
Or stabilizer in the terms that I know, and guardian in the David Kiersey historical terms. I'm with Hannah actually, in that I really got quite excited with the Clubhouse idea. As you can tell, I'm an extroverted stabilizer, and also a feeling preference stabilizer. So, you know, those two things I think play into the sort of recipe there. But certainly the ability to connect with people, the social aspects, but also the space to work, to take away work and work on the real stuff and then bring it back. So I even worked out the days of the week I'm going to come in and work.
Oh, that's good.
So well organized.
So Tuesdays and Wednesdays in the Clubhouse.
In the Clubhouse?
If you're interested.
Great. Yeah, but Hannah had a really good point though, that you may be not located all in the same city anymore. I know myself, I'm doing a lot of work with KPMG right now. My team is predominantly in Australia. We do have one person in Ireland. I do have a few team members in India, and I have a couple in the Netherlands. And occasionally I communicate with people in Canada. So for me to go into the office, for me to go into the Toronto office in Canada, but that would make no sense whatsoever. Because I would be, and quite often too, I work in the Australian time zone. So I'm working in the middle of the night to what my time zone is. So it makes, for somebody like me, that Clubhouse doesn't make sense. So what we've done is some of the people are trying to go into the office sometimes. And what we do on those days is they go into the office, but we always make sure we have a big team meeting. It's still through Teams or Zoom, but at least we're all involved in it. So the people who can connect physically, great, but there's only maybe 2 or 3 of them who are actually located in Perth. Even within Australia, we've got people in Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, and Perth. So it's just it has become a different way of life. And it would be, I mean, pre-pandemic, I would have probably been living in Australia doing this project. I would have been shipped over there for a year or 2 years. So, but
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, Rennie just made a good
Yes.
point. Hannah, if you're an SP, you are actually a resourceful orange.
Yes. I thought you were an SJ.
I'm an SJ.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
maybe
Okay.
said P earlier by mistake. Sorry.
Yeah. That's okay. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no worries.
Yeah. No, but you're definitely right, Renee. An SP would be an orange. And oranges and golds have very different ways of doing things, as we'll probably see when Andy and Marianne tell us what they think an orange view of the world would be. Okay, and also too, it's interesting that you're both extroverted golds, so you're definitely going to have, you're probably more craving that I need to be in the office, I need to be with people. Where if you were introverted, you might not have quite as strong a feeling there. I think after 2 years, even after 2 years, those of us who are introverts are starting to miss that people contact. Okay, great. Well, how about we look at it from the orange perspective? Marianne or Andy, do you want to share with us what your?
Sure. I just unmuted. At the very beginning, I was an educator, and so I can't see how. I don't think online works for educators and their the groups that they're dealing with, and I don't think that the connections on Zoom are as rich as they are one-to-one. And there's a spontaneity, I think, that you lose when you're clicking in and out, when you're not in a group and in a team. So I think that's very concerning. We live in Nanaimo now, that in Canada, that we retired, but I worked for 32 years in Calgary. And at the very beginning of the pandemic, I said to my husband, what about all those office buildings, those empty office buildings downtown? What are they going to do economically with all of those buildings that are just there? And I think it's a very interesting time, and I think there has to be a hybrid of these, all of these issues in the end, because I think one or the other. We've jumped on it because we haven't been able to do that before. People haven't been able to work at home, but they're starting to see, I think they're missing some real connections that you do not have when you are physically in a group. So that would be the only thing that would concern me.
Yeah,
about
and I
that.
think particularly as an educator, educating children, I'm assuming you were educating children.
Yes, at teenagers.
So at that age, I think they really do need to be in person classrooms. Now there are the odd ones who have thrived. I mean, I know one of my friends has a daughter who she has done fantastically well with online learning, actually much better with online learning, but she was in a situation where she was being bullied in school and things like that. So the online actually gave her a safe place, and she loves it. But that's not the majority of kids. The majority of kids really.
And what happens, I believe even, and that can happen in an office situation where there's bullying or someone takes over and, sort of imposes their will. But if you are not together, you do not ever learn how to work through those problems, because you are not there. You can walk away from them. And that again is a real concern, I think, with the whole issue. I think there we look at so many things as just imparting information, which we do. I mean, we learn mathematics or whatever in school, but there are a huge number of other things.
There's all the life skills that they learn.
Exactly, and personal interactions and interacting with a group, or when you're angry with someone. Yes, you can shut it down, or can you talk it out? So there are all sorts of things that are constrained by this particular kind of facilitating, and yet it's wonderful to be able. I mean, we're all over the world, and there's so many positives as well.
Yeah.
I think there are
It,
more
no,
negatives than positives.
yeah. There
Yeah,
are definitely negatives and positives. Andy, do you want to add to that?
yeah, I would agree with Marianne. Yeah, as a coach and a facilitator and as a teacher, I really miss the human contact, and I have done some work online. I haven't done very much because I'm choosing not to. But the work that I have done online, working with groups and so on, I always, towards the end of the session, say, if you were face to face, what would be different? And they know what would be different. You know, they wouldn't be as polite. They wouldn't be as supposedly good listeners, and all sorts of other things. And as one young man said to me, you know, we're in for a rough time when we do get face to face because we don't know how to interact with each other.
Yeah.
You know, we're doing all this stuff online, and yeah, we kind of know the theory, but in the reality of the situation, things are going to be very, very, very different. And you know, this was an eminent business school that I was doing work for, and they were concerned.
Yeah. I know. I've had a couple
They were
of
very concerned.
come to me and say,
Yeah.
hey, do you think you could offer us a course in how to function back in the workplace? How
Yes.
to be in face-to-face meetings again? I
Yes.
mean, you know, you're in a Zoom meeting. Well, you're probably much more relaxed. You know, you might be sitting there in your pajama bottoms,
Yes.
as most of us do.
I'm not.
I'm not either, but I there have been days when, and you also have the ability in a Zoom meeting, you can turn off your camera, you can
Yes.
mute yourself, you can have that discussion with somebody else in the room. That when you go back into a face-to-face situation, that's not not appropriate, right? So it's almost like we have to relearn etiquette, and I think
Indeed.
yeah. And some colors or temperaments have perhaps adopted more flexibility than others. Which colors do you think might have been more flexible in terms of the way they've adapted to the working online?
Well, in all honesty, I thought I would have been someone who would have adapted, but my adaptation is working in the moment with you know, a human being. And so that, you know, do I adapt to technology? Yeah, I can adapt to technology, but not as readily as I would to, you know, working with a human being, you know, live, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the pandemic's hit me very hard. Yes, hit me very, very hard. So yeah, it's I probably said enough.
No, it's okay. I mean, I've heard that from a lot of oranges, because you are very spontaneous. You live in the moment, and you in some ways feed off that human interaction.
Yes.
And it's hard when you don't have the same human interaction when you're sitting here on a Zoom. Yeah, we can see each other and we can listen and everything else, but it's not the same. You don't get quite the same energy. You don't feel the energy the same way as you do when you're actually in a room with people. No. So yeah, Susan?
I was just going to say, I mean, Anne and I are adult educators, and I much prefer face-to-face in-person training, but it's been kind of interesting. So I work at one of our major hospitals, and we do training for people in the not-for-profits. And the first workshop, I'm not sure if Anne was doing it with me or not, the first workshop was management skills. One person from it was way north of Thunder Bay, which is very far north, sent a whole management team. She said, normally I could send one person on this workshop. She said, because of, you know, the flights and food and accommodation, she could now have everybody on the workshop. So much though I prefer to be face-to-face, I've seen a few advantages. And the other thing, working in that arena, apparently teens who have mental health issues were much happier. A small piece of research said actually just picking up the phone and more likely to attend their session than if they had to go into an office. So it's interesting to see how this will all balance out in the future.
I,
But definitely,
I agree. You know, it's on this conference, there are people from all around the world, and you know, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But the thing is, you don't have to be here. Someone said earlier, I think in one of the plenaries, you know, people will choose not to be here and they'll just listen to the recordings.
But if we were doing this as a face-to-face conference, we probably wouldn't have the recordings.
Indeed.
Right? That wasn't something we did when we presented live. So,
indeed. Yeah, indeed. And the experience would be very different.
Very different.
It would be very, very different. So I take your point, Susan. Yeah, you know, I've been online to listen to people all over the world now that I wouldn't have been able to, but it's not the same experience. It's not the same learning experience at all for me. No. Personally.
Yeah. And Catherine just made a good point that often people will say or plan to watch things online, and then they just never get around to doing it.
Yes.
Yes. And also
guilty.
The ones who do, yeah, I'm guilty as well. I know there was a 2-day conference I was at prior to this conference, and a number of sessions I couldn't attend because, you know, other things going on. And yes, I want to go back and listen to them. I checked, yes, they said, you'll have several months, the recordings will be available, but will I get back to them? I don't know. Yeah.
And Deborah made a good point too, that some McKinsey research suggests that we've increased our psychological safety with our virtual interactions as our physical safety has been threatened. So maybe that's one advantage.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's pros and cons to everything, but it's interesting to hear too how, you know, I think as oranges, you're feeling more that you really would like to be back in person. Now, if you had the option to no longer do virtual, do everything face to face, would you go that route as an orange? Yeah, Marianne saying yes.
Yeah, you know, in terms of delivery of stuff, for sure. In terms of, you know, thinking about it and putting something together, not so. You know, that's. But I would, yeah, seize the opportunity if there were face-to-face and there was human contact again, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I think we'll see that the Gold said they would like some face-to-face, but you're also saying that you actually also like that time on your own where you can actually dedicate your time to working on something and you don't have all the disruption of being back in the office.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but again, that is something of a temperament. Now we're only looking at your primary temperament here. Remember, we are made up of all 4 colors, so you're going to get all 4 temperaments play a part in who you are. But I'm not surprised to hear that the oranges particularly are saying, yes, I'd really like to be back face to face. And both of you are even both of you are introverts, so that's interesting as well. Our golds were both extroverts. Okay, how about we move on to our blues, which is Renee, and I think you're on your own for this one, Renee.
But we can support you, Renee.
Susan and I are both blue.
Yeah, you're both blue as well. No, but I think for me, it's interesting because there's all the letters that play a role, if you wish. I mean, at the beginning, I was very happy to, you know, almost be alone in the office because, you know, as an HR, I kind of stayed like last in the office when everybody went. We were in the middle of moving offices and reorganizing. I said, great, nobody's here. We can move. We can ensure the boxes are in place and whatever. So people come back in a week or 2, you know, everything will be set up. And, you know, it lasted way more than a week or 2. Then working from home can adjust, you know, I mean, my wife and I were both introvert preference, so no problem with not socializing because, you know, it's kind of part of our daily life or normal life anyway. But what I noticed after a while is I was missing the interaction with the colleagues as an HR leader. And I had a couple of people resign and I didn't see that coming at all, you know, and I thought, I'm no longer in the hallway. I'm not picking up the vibe. I'm not reading the body language, you know, all these kind of what it says. The authentic blue is usually good at doing. And so I must say that I've really enjoyed being able to go back to the office when it was possible, and to be able to interact with people as well. And if there is a chance, I always say, let's do it together. Let's do it face to face, because I think the quality of the interaction is much better.
Yeah.
If I need to have a difficult discussion, or I also I will resist doing it. If it's online, I will try to find a way to do it face to face as well. So
Yeah.
I find it very interesting, because it's pulling on different letters.
And I think as a Blue particularly, we are very intuitive, and so we do pick up a lot on people's energy and what's happening, and how we read. We're very good at reading between the lines. We're good at reading that body language and understanding people. And when you can only see them from here up, you don't get the same feeling about them, or you don't get this. You can't pick up things quite as easily. So yeah, it's a really good point.
I was thinking also, Renee, that authentic Blues want real relationships, authentic relationships, and it's a little harder to have that virtually. So I could see that the Blues would always want some more face-to-face interaction, just so that they can meet that need.
Well, I said for me as a Blue, one of the hardest things through the pandemic was not being allowed to hug anybody. Like I live alone, so I don't have anybody else in my house. And, we were really, told that was, you don't have physical contact unless you live together. So I was like, for 2 years, I didn't hug anyone. That was hard as a Blue. I'm sure it was hard for other colors as well, but I think we maybe felt that a little bit more. And even as an introvert, it was definitely
but then you watch a TV program of people pre-pandemic hugging and what are you doing?
I know, you can't do that.
And they say going back to face, it's almost, I feel myself going, oh, are you okay to get close to? So we have to overcome that in the next little while, I think.
Yes, and should I or shouldn't I wear a mask when I see you?
Because and I thought you would, and I tried to carry on, but I found myself going back to type very quickly. And now we no longer have to wear the mask in the office. I don't wear it, and then we no longer have to do it in the public transport. And the next day I don't. Wow. So I find it very interesting as well.
Yeah.
And we're a little behind you in all of that. So.
Yes, and here, depending on your office place, a lot of office places have said you still need to wear a mask if you're coming into the office. And public transport here, we still have to wear masks on public transport. But then if you go into grocery stores or anything like that, it's your choice. But I'm seeing probably 80% of people are still wearing their masks. But it's only 2 weeks now, so I'm sure that.
I think sorry, Anne. One of the hardest events I facilitated virtually was where I had me and my co-facilitator, we were dialing in virtually separately from the UK. We had 2 people in Cambridge in the UK who were dialing in together but had 2 different screens, so we're looking both at the big camera and at their screens. Then we had 5 people in the US, all of whom were wearing masks but in the same meeting room. It was so energy draining in terms of how are we doing in talking about in fact we were talking about type, we were doing temperament, but how is it going? It was really difficult. Particularly the worst thing was the masks in the meeting room, and some people were using their own laptops and some people were using the conference camera. I think was one of the most challenging in all the years I've been doing it. It was really tough. You can't pick up the signals.
No.
I would rather have everybody, I think, tiled like we are here, individual, or everybody in a conference room than have that mix match. I think I would try to influence that in
I know
that cropped up again.
Because I've been doing training sessions sort of all over the world virtually with the work I'm doing, and we've had some sessions where they said, oh well, we're allowed, in say India, we're allowed to bring people into the office, but we all have to be masks. But they don't necessarily have their own laptops to work from home. So we brought that group into the office, but yeah, we've had a few people in Australia and maybe the Netherlands who aren't. They're doing it virtually, just totally virtually. So yeah, it's an even
You can't
stranger
see
dynamic.
people.
Yeah,
You
but
can't see
it's
them
almost
properly
easier not
visually.
yeah, or if you can't see everybody, I find that's easier than if you can see some people and not others, because you tend to focus on the ones you can see, which isn't appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Interesting.
yeah. And what's Hannah? I think there's a risk of everyone feeling a breach of psychological contact, have it being being allowed. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I would imagine we've just got enough time for the NTs.
Yes, let's do our NTs.
Okay, shall I go then?
Totally.
I think it's just me and Jerry, isn't it? Yes. So so I can't remember all the options that were on your slide from that Harvard Business
That's
Review
okay.
report. So don't worry about it. But one of the things I definitely wouldn't and don't like is hot desking. I have done it. I hated it. Sometimes you'd get there and there was no free desk.
Yep.
Other times there would be, but someone had left their half-eaten sandwich there,
or
or there was no stapler or whatever it was wanted to use. And the other thing I personally don't like is working in big open plan offices, because people are always chatting and interrupting you and talking about the telly. So obviously I'm an introverted NT. So
yeah,
you know,
like that quiet,
so those yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean, I like in terms of the ideal work environment, I like to be able to work when I want, come and go when I want, have access to ideas and resources, have occasional access to other people, you know, small groups of people to brainstorm some ideas with. So I would want to meet up with people, but I wouldn't want to feel forced to go to like a clubhouse at a certain time and have to do lots of chit chat, you know.
Yeah.
And I definitely wouldn't want to, I like to have freedom in which days I, you know, might want to go to the office or the clubhouse or whatever, or which days I'd be working quietly at home. So that would be my independent NT sort of take on things. Yeah. What about you, Jerry?
Yeah, I was kind of amused through the conversation. I've been amused at what I wrote down, because I kind of wrote about the theory of it rather than how I feel about it. So that's a bit of an NT kind of response, I guess, isn't it? For me, I mean, I've ended up as an independent practitioner anyway, so I've kind of put myself in that space where I have independence. I'm able to organize myself. I have missed the face-to-face, because I think, as a number of people have said, that the amount of information you get from people face-to-face very huge, qualitatively completely different. But on the other hand, the T bit of me says, well, actually no, but that's quite efficient. You know, you haven't had to spend half a day traveling in order to have that meeting, so it's better use of money and time. But also there's that sense, I think, even with a strong preference for introversion, which I do have, that actually you are isolated and it's all on your own shoulders, and there's no sense of, I think when you meet with, even if you're working as a facilitator with a group, there's a sense of actually shared psychological energy, rather than if you're on your own, actually you've got to generate it all yourself. And I've found that quite demanding. Yeah, but I was interested in the way I'd answered the question was quite remote initially.
Yeah. No, but hey, you were true to your type and temperament, right?
Well, as one tends to be, yes. Yeah, for good or ill.
Tends to be. Yeah.
I suspect if we had some ENCPs here, I suspect they would be more keen on the interaction.
Yes.
Would go to the clubhouse.
Yeah.
So I don't think Jerry and I are particularly.
No. My other half would definitely. My other half ENTP preferences, and she would definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, she'd like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to have more of that that brainstorming dialogue. All that kind of stuff going on. Yeah. And I think that's true for extroverts in general. You perhaps need more of that stimulation than introverts. But one of the things I found being an introvert, and I think I've kind of heard that from some of the other introverts here, is that after 2 years, I'm ready to see people again. Like, you know, I'm tired of being in my office by myself. It's not the same. So yeah.
And it's funny as an extrovert, because we have got extroverts here. I almost had to plan to call friends so that I knew if I didn't see or talk to people online or through, I would sort of go downhill. So I had to actively sort of make a schedule to see and talk with friends, because that was the only way I was going to get through COVID. I don't know about because that was our last little chat, the difference between introvert and extrovert. Well, that's come out in the conversation.
I think it's
Hannah, what did you find? And Deborah, how did you meet your extrovert needs through this time?
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough to live with close friends during it, so I think that helped me a lot. But yeah, being on my own, I'd definitely be scheduling calls as well.
Yeah.
Yes, and I live on my own, but I've got lots of friends and family around, so I actually got zoomed out. I mean, you know, we did family Zoom quizzes, and I have to say, even as an extrovert, I just didn't want another Friday night Zoom quiz after about 3 months. But yes, I initiated quite a few of those at the start, I think.
Yeah, even as an introvert, I know, like, after a couple of months into COVID, I think I said to Susan, I said, I've got to take a break from technology. I took 3 days and I just didn't go online or anything because, as you say, I was zoomed out. I was actually probably seeing people more at the beginning of COVID because everybody was trying to, you know, oh, let's get together for drinks virtually, or let's, you know, whatever it was. I seemed to be spending so much time on Zoom that it was like, okay, I've had enough of people.
You know, even as an introvert, during the pandemic, I went out every day. You know, I think best when I move. So for me, it was about going out, and there weren't very many people out, but we would always stop and talk, and it kept me sane. I must admit, it really, really did. Just you know, just 2 minutes of conversation with a stranger across a road.
Because you couldn't get close to them to talk, but you could. Yeah, you
indeed.
could. Yeah, I found that too. I was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And
I found I was fine at home because there are 2 of us here, but my husband's an ENFJ, and almost every day you could see him sit on the couch and think. He was thinking, what can I get at the grocery store? Because the grocery store and the drugstore were open. And every day he figured out something that he needed to get to make something else. And I thought I could be in prison, I'm fine. But because there were 2 of us here, I didn't have, you know, I didn't have to.
I think it did help to have somebody else living in your house. I have a cat, and I swear my cat got me. He's a crazy cat. He's a dog, but I swear he's what got me through COVID. Because living alone through COVID, if I hadn't had another living being in the house, I don't think it would have gone well. But,
and we've got 3 minutes left.
3 minutes, yes.
And I just wanted to say about this, because this has hit me twice this week about the future of work.
Yeah.
Is that I don't know if it's the same in other places, but in Canada, we may not have enough people in jobs. So we really need to find ways of retaining people. And I think finding out what people's preferences are and being somewhat flexible about that is one of the ways that Canadian companies are going to retain their employees. If not, you know, we'll continue to see people looking elsewhere where they have that flexibility. So
yeah, the Great Resignation is a real thing. I don't know if you're using the same terminology in the UK, but yeah, we're definitely seeing it. I know doing a lot of consulting work with a large global firm right now, they've actually been going out to their people and putting out surveys. How do you want to come back to work? Or do you want to come back to work? What does that look like? And they're actually listening because they're really worried about that. So, yeah.
We have 2 minutes for any questions.
Yes.
Or comments.
This isn't a question, it's a comment, but a recent survey by Microsoft and YouGov in the UK said that 51% of people would leave if the hybrid option was removed. So most companies that I've heard of anyway in the UK seem to be going for the hybrid option. And I've been doing some work with Google for the last 1.5 years. And I think globally, they're tending to go for 3 days in the office and 2 days working from home.
Yeah.
The same, I think, in Canada too.
Yeah.
I think we're finding the same thing. I think actually our numbers, think I've read a survey recently that if the hybrid option was taken away totally, 70% of people said that they would leave here. Yeah. So yeah, it's opened up a whole new world of work and way of working, which is great. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay. We just thought we'd put it out there. Those are our two books that we've already mentioned. Our latest one, Your Personality Unlocked, Living Life to Its Fullest, looks at using temperament in all parts of your life and how you can make the best, live your best life when you understand temperament. And then our first book was all around using temperament in the work world. Okay, they are available on Amazon worldwide. If you have any other questions after this presentation, or you want to get in touch with Susan and I, feel free to contact us at info@upyourpotential.com, or you can check out our website at upyourpotential.com to see what kind of services we offer. And we just want to thank you for attending. It was nice having a small group because we did get a chance to have a good discussion going. So thank you all.
Great. Well, thank you both very much, Susan and Anne. Thank you so much for sharing your research with us, and also for facilitating, yeah, as you say, a really interesting discussion amongst the different temperaments here. So thank you too for everybody else's input. And so I'm going to stop the recording here.